And now, after asking all my questions, I'm going to open it up for you guys to ask your question. But they already answered it.
Well, it's more like comment.
Sure.
More, and I just feel like there's like this idea that like women are oppressed by the hijab and stuff like that. And I don't think in America it's true at all, because how does that make sense? Because it's a choice.
Excellent.
But then there's also other countries like Iran, where like that's where I'm from, and where like women are forced to wear the hijab.
Sure.
And like in that sense, I've noticed a lot, because I grew up with that. You know, like my dad has really different ideologies because he grew up in the country. You know, that's very different. And I noticed that like what it can do when it's like this forced thing, it can lead to like, I feel like a perpetuation of like rape culture, in the sense that like women need to be scared and they need to come to themselves, which is like really, I think, difficult in some circumstances when you like are grown up being taught that like your brother doesn't need to protect himself, but you do because you're a woman. And I feel like that's a difficult aspect of it, because like in the sense of that like women are put down for a hijab, that's ridiculous. You know, women should have the absolute right to wear a hijab, and like, that's something that we should fight for. But I also think that there is an aspect, like just because I grew up with it, and I just was putting that out there.
So there's a couple of things.
Yeah.
One thing is, we always have to differentiate between Islam and what may be practiced in a particular country.
Totally.
Like in Iran, where you're from, they have what's called muta. It's a temporary marriage. That's not an Islamic concept. You don't find in the Quran, you don't find in the Prophet saying. In fact, in the Battle of Khaybar, the Prophet clearly, and Ali is the one who narrated, he said he forbid this type of practice. So what goes on in Iran doesn't really represent Islam.
No, absolutely not.
And that's to your point.
That's why I thought it was so funny that you said if it's forced, it doesn't work. I was like, that's the whole country is forced. So
and not just that. I mean, if you look at countries like Iran, there's a lot of double standards. There are a lot of hypocrisy that you find, and other countries as well. And that's why I'm not here to represent any country or the way they use it. But Islam itself, it has a beautiful connection between you and your Creator. And that should always be that way. Now, there are some laws that will be enforced. For example, like I said, nobody should steal. But we have laws to stop people from stealing, because some people, there's two types of people, right? There's the people that have what we would call the fear of God, right? They will not do things just because they're good people, whether it's because they're religious or because, they just have a good sense, good upbringing. But then there's those people that you need laws for. And that's why we have jails and prisons and all that kind of system. But those spiritual laws, they are indeed, in essence, between you and your Creator. And that's why countries like Iran, with a lot of the things that they do have going on, and trust me, there's a lot of bad that goes on in Iran, and I'm sure you know, it's a hypocrisy. And that's why I don't find Iran to be an Islamic government at all.
Right. And that's what I agree with you too, and I think that you can't really take an extreme country like Iran, because there's so many countries in that area who like are majority Muslim and stuff like that, and it's not the same at all.
So true.
That's throwing out there.
Having said that, I will also make another point though. Like I said, in an ideal world, what did the Quran tell us? It tells us protect your eyes, don't look at what you're not supposed to look at, don't lust at what you're not supposed to lust at, protect everybody, and that would be wonderful. But unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. And our Creator knew that there was going to be good and bad, and that's why there's rewards and punishments. And if we look at Mesa College or San Diego State or UCSD or any university or college campus or the boot camps at any military facility, and you look at the ratios of rape, there is a problem. We can deny it. We can say, no, a woman should not have to do anything different from a man. But how many women get raped and how many men get raped? Right? So there's a problem. And we have to deal with it as a society. And we're not. We're sweeping it under the rug. Why do you have blue lights here? For you to push when you're being raped, because it's such a problem. Look, Google the Air Force Academy, and how many women that went through a military organization, part of our government, were raped while trying to serve the country. Right? So something is wrong. I would love to say that men and women should defend themselves or act exactly the same, but that's just not reality. So we have to deal with that aspect as well. So if I was myself going to go take a walk right now at night, I'd probably be less afraid than if I was going to have my wife or my daughter go out, just because that's how animal instinct has been set up. And that's why we have to protect against that. And I would say that's one of the parts of humanity that we have to mitigate. There's greed, there's lust, there's this idea of if nobody's watching, I can get away with it. These are things you have to mitigate, because if you don't address it, then the problem doesn't go away. So, go ahead.
Quick question, which is, it's going off of that point. Do you feel that there's different interpretations of the Quran?
Sure. When we talk about interpretations or different ideas, there's always going to be, no doubt. But when you look at a text, if you really want to follow that text as it is, it's pretty clear how to do it. So we have 14 and a half centuries of scholarly work. And out of 14 and a half centuries, we've had a consensus of scholars that the hijab is obligatory for women. Whether the hijab allows the face and hands to be shown or to be covered, there is some disagreement among scholars. But the basics of hijab have been agreed upon. Now today there is the idea of let's rewrite religion. Let's make a movement to change it. And people have the right to do whatever they want, but we feel that Islam is fine the way it is. We don't need to reinterpret the Quran, we just need to follow it correctly. And when we look at ideologies like ISIS, or if you look at some of the terrorist extremist groups, they misuse Islamic ideology, and that's why the major scholars of the Muslim world have refuted them. Just like you would say, for example, to bring it kind of closer to home, anybody heard of Hitler? All right, glad you have. Bert, all right, little mustache, yeah, all right, good. So Hitler claimed to be a Christian, right? I mean, if you don't believe me, Google Hitler Bible quotes in speeches. We got the Google now. He quoted the Bible in his speeches. What was the sign of the German army? The iron what?
Cross.
Good job. The iron cross. It wasn't a crescent. So, would we say that his understanding of Christianity is correct? No. What about the KKK? Have you heard of the KKK? I'm glad you have, because Trump hasn't. So, KKK is an organization, in case some of you haven't, like Trump, even though you got endorsed by him, that burns something in your yard. Do you know what it is? It's a cross. They have Bible studies. They have churches. And even though personally, I think they're as far as you can get from the teachings of Jesus, peace be upon him. But they claim that's their understanding of Christianity. If you study history, and many of you history majors, good luck getting a job. So, if you study history, you will find that there was a time when the Christian authorities, including the Pope, wrote verdicts saying it's okay to sell black people. Why? Because they said God created man in his image. And that image was a white man with blue eyes and long blonde hair. I don't know how that happened in Palestine, but anyway. So that's the image of God. Christmas trees? Seriously? Bethlehem? So, Santa Claus? So, when you see God as a white man, then they said anybody who's not that is not a human, because they're not created in the image of God. So you can buy and sell them like animals, and that's why you had the slave trade. Do we think those are authentic understandings of Christianity? No. Although somebody could hold that view. So in Islam, we have the majority Muslim ummah. Right? Those that come together, that have consensus, that have 14 and a half centuries of scholarly work. And then you have the offshoot groups like what happened in Iran, or like the Alawis, or the Nation of Islam, the bow tie, bean pies, all that kind of stuff. That's not Islam. You can't say white man is devil. There were white prophets. Every nation got a prophet. There were white companions of the prophet. Islam teaches you there is no differentiation between white and black. That's the saying of the prophet. So how can you say white man is the devil? I don't accept that as a credible difference of opinion. I say that's an error. So, do we have some disagreements? Yes, but in the majority, we got it pretty good. Just follow it now, and that's the problem. And why is that a problem? As you've studied history, there was a thing called colonization, when the people in Europe decided to take over the world. I don't know why. Maybe they didn't like the weather in England, I don't know. But every Muslim country basically got conquered. India, which is not a Muslim country, but a lot of Muslims there. If you look at Somalia, if you look at most of the Middle East, if you look at Libya, what happened there with the Germans. Indonesia. Everybody, basically. Right? And what did they do? They walked in and they didn't say, we're going to develop your country, we're going to build you colleges. No, they shot the scholars. Umar Mukhtar, anybody not heard of him, Google him. They killed the Quran teachers. They killed those thinkers that would lead society. So what did you have? You had a vacuum. And when those colonial powers left, they left dictators in place to make sure that those vacuums stay. Until today, Western governments, whether it's the Russians supporting the Syrian massacre going on, or, let's be honest, us helping some leaders who aren't the nicest of people to their own people. And let's not forget who sold Saddam those weapons, right? And we're still using the Muslim world for oil, for resources, and nobody wants to see a powerful Middle East, right? Nobody wants to see a Middle Eastern Union. So when you make that kind of vacuum, then you get people like ISIS. I gotta ask you a question. Before the invasion of Iraq, right? Anybody think that far back? Right? WMDs, remember what that was? Nah, nobody cares anymore, right? Short attention span. So, before the invasion of Iraq, was there anything called ISIS?
No.
Huh? Before the invasion of Iraq, was there any Al-Qaeda in Iraq? Go look it up. Saddam Hussein kept that bad boy on tight lockdown. Not that I'm saying he was a good guy, horrible guy, but they weren't. It was the most educated country in the Middle East. Google it. Highest rate of literacy. Women's lib. They had a foreign minister that was Christian. Tariq Aziz, their foreign minister, was Christian. If you don't believe me, go to Oklahoma, talk to the Chaldean community. When was their life better, under Saddam or after the war? So that tells you that, look, when you walk into countries and you mess up what they have, and you leave that vacuum, what do they say, the cows come home or roosters come home, something like that. Anyway. So, questions? Anything. Don't feel shy. I won't cut off your head. Seriously, I won't. That's just TV stuff. Go ahead.
So what's the difference between the hijab and the what?
Burqa.
Burqa.
Excellent. So, these words, if we look at hijab, technically from hajaba in Arabic, meaning to conceal or to have like a barrier between. Then there's what's called jilbab. And jilbab from jalabihinna in the Quran, to cover up a big cloth that covers. Burqa is a recent word that mostly is used in Afghanistan, Pakistan, in these areas. You don't really hear it in Arab countries. And they all could kind of refer to the same thing, but nowadays, hijab is usually referring to what was technically called the khimar, which is a cloth on the head, and then the burqa is more the full body one, and the abaya is like, that's the niqab, when the eyes are showing. Yeah. But Islamic terminology, the idea of hijab is a full covering that hides that which is your zina in Arabic, yani, what is a beautification for you. Right? So whatever is tempting to a people, you protect that from sight. That's the idea of hijab. Whether you call it a burqa or a abaya or a jilbab, it's up to you. Whether you call it a hat or a kufi, whatever. Anybody else? Yes?
Can you clarify that your imama?
Mine?
Difference between
That's what I was going to ask.
Just because I got style? What? This is not an imama. This is called a shimag or a ghutra. And this is what you find a lot in the Middle East. It's a traditional wearing, but what I'm wearing underneath my cool jacket is what's called a thawb. It's bigger. I hope I don't have any technical difficulties here. So this is also loose clothing. Men also have their own restrictions on clothing. I'm not going to call it hijab because that's a different concept, but the concept of male dress. I'm not going to come up here in Speedos or a marble bag because you do not want to see that. So hey, you don't have to agree with me that quick. Who was that? So the point is, men also have their concepts of hijab. They have their concept of haya, their concept of dress. And the male dress, it should cover from navel to the knee, and it should be modest, it should be loose, it shouldn't show the tight-fitting, the skinny jeans. Not doing it, not my thing. And most Muslim men will cover their head, whether it's with just a cap, or with the actual turban that is tied, or with a ghutra. And that's a part of the modest dress of a Muslim man as well. Am I good on your question, or you good? All right. You want to know where you can buy land?
Sure.
Saudi. What else? Questions, please.
I spent a lot of time over in the Middle East, and I was just
Nice.
wondering.
Where at?
Huh?
Where at?
Iraq,
Oh,
Kuwait,
sorry.
Saudi, I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
I spent some time there too, but not in Iraq. Never been to Iraq. But yeah, I don't. Saudi, Emirates,
Wasn't for a
Kuwait.
good reason. That's for sure. I just think. Anyways, when I was asking about the burqa, because I saw some with just the eyes,
Sure.
some with like a
Little
down the mouth was open, but there was a cross across. The
Yes, that's like the Bedouin style. That's more
face. Call that the
tradition.
new age, newer, the younger generation.
Right. So there's two basic opinions. One is that your face and hands can show, but everything should be covered. And the other is that the face is a focal point of beauty, so it should also be covered except what's needed to see and to do in your regular life. So those that take the opinion that they wear what's called a niqab, and you can see the eyes but nothing else. And those that take the other opinion, then the face and hands are showing. But the different styles is just tradition. You know, some people have it where it's black, some people go with white. If you look in the Middle East, black is pretty common. But if you go to like Indonesia, Malaysia, other colors are more common. That's usually more dictated by tradition. Like in Afghanistan, mostly you'll see the big blue ones, which you won't find in the Middle East. But the concept of hijab is to hide your beauty, to make sure that it doesn't become something that you get molested or annoyed because of, and that you are respected for who you are, an honorable woman, not just for your shape and size and all that kind of stuff. So whether you wear a blue burqa or a black one, it's kind of more up to you. Just don't wear like bright pink with polka dots or something. That's probably not going to do the job. Go ahead.
I would think that inevitably you probably deal with some sort of hatred or some comments. And how do you deal with that, especially when you're with your children or with
Well, my kids are here, so I try to educate people, and I try to use those hate-filled comments as moments where I can educate people. Sometimes it doesn't work out quite like I planned. So I'll tell you a true story. I was with one of my friends, and we pulled up to a red light, and this is actually quite long ago. It was even before 9/11, but it was this group of young men with shaved heads and light skin, not judging, pulled up next to us in a pickup truck. So we looked at them, and they looked at us, and they didn't say anything, and I didn't say anything. And then their light turned with the arrow, and when it turned, they yelled out, "You killed Jesus!" and took off. It's like, what the hell? You killed Jesus? And then I realized they thought we were Jewish, and they were trying to make a racist comment against Jews. So, wanting to use it as an opportunity to educate people, I turned my car into their lane and tried to follow them. But they really took off. I was just trying to explain something to them, So, it doesn't really work out sometimes. I was with my kids recently and my wife, and we were trying to get on the 8 by El Cajon, and a car next to us said something like, ISIS killers, behead or something. So I put down the window, I was like, what? And he was like, you were ISIS. And I was like, no, are you KKK? So the fact that I spoke English kind of shocked them, which tells you their education level. But then I told him, hey, pull over and we can talk. Like, I can explain to you, But he didn't really want to pull over. So even though I tried to get him to, try to cut him off and everything, but it didn't work. I'm not scared. I was raised in this country. I've been through a lot growing up. So, everybody goes through racism, when we were young kids, and don't tell anybody even though this is being recorded, we would have, like us who were usually minorities, whether we were Mexican or African American or any other kind of minority, and we would have one white kid with us, all right? Don't try this at home, all right? So we would have him dress up really like preppy, like nice collared shirt, button down, and we would wear like big baggy pants and big baggy shirts and bandanas. We'd go into a store and just be really loud, and all that security and attention would be on us. And that guy would be stealing everything. But nobody looked at him because he didn't look the part. And that's where you have to be careful. I mean, if you ever see a guy dressed like me, looking like me, get on a plane, you are safe. Because if he was going to try anything, trust me, he wouldn't be trying it looking like this. If you look at any terrorists from the 9/11 hijackers or afterwards, you don't see them with big beards and turbans and thobes. No, they're going to want to blend. So those racist ideas, those kinds of stereotypical ideas, those kinds of stereotypes, they don't really do anybody any good. I try to use those opportunities to educate people, to build bridges, but sometimes when somebody's yelling something, they don't really want to talk to you, unfortunately. So, yeah, we deal with it, and what comes, we'll deal with it, especially in January. Go ahead.
So I think it's absolutely great that you try and educate people. However, how do your kids deal with the stigma, like being young?
How do you guys deal with it?
What?
Do you ever get like hate comments or anything? Not really? Yeah. All right. If you do, what are you going to do?
I don't know.
There you go. Yeah. You know, you can't change who you are. You have to live with it. And you have to educate people and hope that we'll have a better tomorrow. I mean, the fact that we're here and you guys are here and there are professors here, that's a hopeful thought. You know, just because Trump won doesn't mean that America is Trump. We're still here, just letting you know, right? And we're still going to build a society where people have the right to practice their religion, and we're going to fight for it. I'm not going to be scared of it. I'm not going to be going anywhere. If Trump wants us to leave, let him leave. Let him go back to Austria or Germany or wherever he came from. This isn't his land. His dad doesn't own it. This isn't Trump Towers. So we're going to be here. If somebody makes a comment, we'll deal with it. Just like African Americans dealt with it, just like Japanese Americans dealt with it, just like Mexican Americans are still dealing with it, just like Italian Americans. You know, if you read history before the Godfather movie, Italians were stereotyped. People thought they were all mafia guys, and you know, then the movie Godfather came on and it became cool. We need to make a movie. But, you know, we'll deal with it, inshallah, by the will of Allah, and hope that these kinds of gatherings and these kinds of meetings and these kinds of dialogue will build a better tomorrow for us. Go ahead.
Do you ever find men wearing the female hijab and then vice versa?
I know this transgender stuff's getting out of hand, but I've never run into a man wearing a hijab, but if I ever did, I'd probably sit down and be like, hey bro, let's talk. I've never run into it, but you know, there may be somebody somewhere.
Would that be like an issue?
It would be. I mean, in Islam, a man should dress like a man, a woman dresses like a woman, and that is what nature has developed over centuries. You know, I don't even wear pink shirts. I'm not cool with it.
It's sad.
I'm just curious to know how your religion thinks of homosexuals and transgenders.
Good questions. So, as a religion, almost every religion, not just our religion, if you look at the biblical teachings or the teachings of the Torah or even Hindu traditions, homosexuality is forbidden. If some churches accept it today, that's their choice. I mean, you know, everybody has the freedom to do what they like. But if you're talking from a biblical perspective, it's pretty hard to try to, you know, change the verses that are there. As Muslims, we believe that you need to live by what you preach. Meaning, if I'm a Muslim, I need to live by what my religion teaches. If I don't like it, then I should leave it. So, but I'm not going to change it. So Islamically, the nature of man and woman and reproduction and the development of the species and production is through marriage of a man and woman. And that is what Muslims believe. Now, as a country, we have laws here that are passed, and we respect the laws. You know, we live by the laws, so whatever that is. But as a religion, we condemn homosexuality and transgender and Q. I don't know what Q is for. L, B, G, Y, X, T, Q, L, S, Y.
Question. It's question. A queer or question?
Are queer or question?
Yeah. I mean, that's what.
Which one is it?
Either. It could be either.
What does that mean? When I was growing up, queer was just a bad term to use for somebody you were trying to make fun of. I didn't know there was a difference. But
yeah, queer is like you don't really identify as something. You're unsure.
You're not sure yet.
Yeah.
So kind of experimenting.
It's like figuring yourself out. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I know there's like.
You could just call that a college student.
No.
So.
Undecided major. Anyway, I think you had a question about that.
Yeah, first of all, I want to give a comment that the presentation was really good.
Thank you.
Get to learn a lot. Second,
You can like it on Facebook. No, I'm just kidding. We don't.
I'm just curious if you keep your style, which I like, you keep it outside when you hang out?
Yes, I'm stylish everywhere. I'm a vice president in a medical device company as a profession. So obviously at work, I'm usually in slacks and a shirt and maybe a suit if I'm, it's like a fancy meeting or interview. But when I get home, usually when I go to the store or when I'm going around with the family, I usually dress like this. And first, because it's a great way to break stereotypes and educate people and kind of open up that, and that's why I kind of started my presentation with a little joke of speaking with an accent, because everybody assumes that. You know, you go to a store and they're like, "How are you?" Like, "I'm fine. How are you?" "You want to speak English?" Like, "Yeah, so do you." So you know, it kind of opens up that dialogue for what we call dawah. You know, what we call inviting towards a better understanding of Islam or acceptance of Islam. So that's one reason. Secondly, it's really comfortable. I'm telling you, man, you know, you like skinny jeans. How you breathe in that? I don't get that. You know, so it's not my thing. So it's comfortable, and also it represents closer to the dress of the prophets. Like even if you look at the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's dress, or if you look at Jesus, like you know nowadays you see those Christmas Jesus posters, and they're all wearing these kind of clothes. You never see Jesus in tight jeans and a tight T-shirt or something, right? You see Mary all covered up. You know, you see the three wise kings all wearing Arab clothing. You're like, oh man, wish you would dress like that. You're worshiping it. So you know, it represents a holy methodology of the earlier prophets and trying to follow them, because how you dress speaks about you. For example, if somebody comes in with an NWA shirt, don't try to act like you don't know what that is. I mean, everybody knows now, right? And you come with some baggy jeans and a bandana, and you got a Run DMC. I'm sorry, I don't listen to new music, so I'm gonna go old reference. Whoa, it's not that old, bro. Come on. So you Run DMC hat, and you have like that kind of clothing. So that tells you that they are identifying themselves with hip hop culture, right? If I come into the Metallica shirt and ripped jeans and I don't know, boots or whatever rock and roll people listen to, heavy metal stuff, Led Zeppelin, I don't know. So whatever, that represents you listen to that, right? So everybody represents themselves. So how do you represent yourself in your clothing? So I hope that the modest garb of Islam represents a modest, a lifestyle of piety, or at least an attempt to live that kind of lifestyle. So yes, I do. What else? Come on, I'm sure you got questions, something you saw on Fox, or something you learned from a Trump campaign. No, I'm just kidding. Can't learn anything from Trump. Something you learned and you may want to clarify.
I had a friend in Japan, and he was a government employee, and his whole family was there. Of course, she was not able to drive because she always had to sit in the back seat, and she had to leave out of the kitchen door. And when she went out in public, she had to wear a robe.
Gotcha. Where was this?
She was American.
Where was this?
Japan.
Where's that? Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, it's in Saudi.
So the first thing is Saudi Arabia has their own laws, and in Saudi Arabia women are not allowed to drive. Right. But that's more an idea that their government and their scholarly committees felt was good, but that's not really core in Islam. Because if you look at the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his wives, and those that came after them from the pious women of the past, they used to ride horses, they rode camels. So to say women can't drive as a clear ruling in Islam, I don't find it. And that's why if you look at every other Muslim country, women can drive. Sitting in the back seat, I don't know, maybe it's cultural. I mean, when my wife drives around in America, she doesn't sit in the back seat. So I don't see any Islamic link to that. And leaving from the kitchen door, again, maybe it was cultural, but it's got nothing to do with Islam itself. And that's why I was saying earlier, a lot of cultural practices have to do with the culture that's there, not the religion itself. So in the religion of Islam, women can go out through any door they like. Mixing between men and women that are not mahram, that are not related, is obviously something not allowed. So they can't be hanging out, in bars or whatever that people do in society. But if like in my house, when we have a party, the women have the front of the house, they have the front door, we men get to be in the back. So that's more culture, I guess, than religion. Go ahead.
Can I just add something to driving? So I lived in Saudi Arabia before, and I think that women there for not driving, they live like queens,
Right.
They don't drive. Why don't you think in a good way decide advantage?
If I didn't have to drive, I wouldn't.
Yeah, we have, siblings or uncles or my dad who would take us, but we also had a driver as well. Just take it as a good thing.
They had I think it was Frontline or somebody that had an interview with some Saudi women, and they said, what do you feel about, getting jobs and working? And a lot of them were like, we're cool. We got money, we got big houses, we got servants, we got drivers. We don't want to be out there doing labor. But we're here to discuss more religion than culture. Whether having a driver is nice or not, that's a different issue. But the fact that in Islam, if a woman wants to drive, she has the right to do so, as long as within the framework of not being harmed. So now, if a woman is in her proper garb and she goes out, drives, like my wife does, takes the kids, brings them to school, shop, there's no problem with that in Islam. Now, cultural and better and worse, I'm going to leave that to cultural battles. I'm not going to represent any country or culture. I'm here to represent a religion. So. Questions? Come on. Go ahead.
So I remember growing up, I had some friends who were Muslim, and they prayed multiple times a day, right?
5.
5 times. Why 5 times? And you face a certain...
Yes, excellent. So, Muslims pray 5 times a day, every day. And that is because that's what our Creator ordained for us in the Quran. 5 times prayer every day. And that's what the Prophet, peace be upon him, showed us. So we have 5 daily prayers throughout the day. And the prayers, depending on the prayer, take between 5 to 10 minutes. So they really don't take that long. But it's a great reminder. One of the benefits, why? Because it's in the Quran. But one of the benefits is it kind of puts you back on check. You know, kind of throughout your day, you kind of get tempted. Should I just cheat through this final? Or, you know, should I? Oh, I'm sure you never got tempted, right? Or should I, you know, lie at my work to get a raise? Or should I steal something? And then you pray and you realize, no, I can't do that. I'm a Muslim. I got to live by these laws. So it's a great reminder throughout the day. We face the Kaaba, which is, we call it the Qibla, and that is in current day Saudi Arabia. And that's not that we worship it, but to unite the Muslims in prayer. You know, in the prayer, you know, we go down, and if you're facing different directions, you're hitting heads. So you kind of unite everybody to one direction. But as Muslims, Islam is a strictly monotheistic religion. So we don't worship any house, any rock, any person. We don't worship the Prophet. We only worship Allah, the Creator of everybody and everything. But we face a direction to unite the whole Muslim world. Cool. More. Go ahead.
I don't know too much about the religion, so I don't want to
That's
sound
what we're here for.
disrespectful, but
Don't worry about it. You're not going to offend me.
Is there also in the Quran, is there a commandments also? Like a version of that? And is it 10?
Okay, so the 10 commandments, if we take them, for example, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, you know, you can find all of those in the Quran, but they're not listed like 10 like that. Rather, we find many, many, many rulings in the Quran. Not to eat pork, not to drink alcohol. Yeah, throughout. And that's why if you look at the Quran, there are rulings, there are lessons from the history of other people. There is the future, what's going to happen in judgment, in heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff. There is introduction to who is your creator, his what we call sifat and asma, his names and attributes. So all of that is in the Quran. And that's why it's a miraculous book. There are scientific miracles, you can Google that. There are entire books. There's an excellent book I recommend. It's by Dr. Maurice Bucaille. And he was a French atheist scientist. He started a research to prove religions were wrong and how they couldn't fit with modern science. And he started with the Bible. And he presented his views to a standing ovation and applause to the French atheist scientific community.
The name of that book?
It's called the Bible, the Quran, and Science. Dr. Maurice Bucaille. You can get a PDF online, you can order it, I'm sure you have it in the library. So then he went to the Quran, and he found that the Quran had so many scientific facts that there is no way that a man who was unlettered, illiterate, in a desert 1400 years ago could have known those facts. It's impossible. So he himself became a Muslim, and he wrote this book. And it's quite a while ago. I mean, this is a historic. Many other scientists have become Muslim, but you can look that up. There's also other lectures you can look up on this issue. So the Quran has many things. It's not just rulings. It's not just the stories of the people of the past. Scientific facts, miracles, other things that were the Romans and Persian and who would win, prophecies that came true later. You know, linguistic richness. If you look at every language, you cannot track its rulings back to one final authority. Like if I was to ask you, is it potato or potato? I don't know. If you're in England, it's potato, tomato. If you're here, it's potato. If you're in Texas, it's y'all. If it's here, it's different. So English, it's a dynamic language. You can't really take it back and say Shakespeare, that's pure English, and everything before it is nothing, and everything after it. But Arabic is all tracked back to the Quran. even when non-Muslims teach Arabic, they go back to the Quran for the final saying on nahu and sarf and balagha and all these things. So the Quran is preserved like that. And that's another miracle, is the richness of the language of the Quran. And that's why we as Muslims don't believe in changing the Quran at all. No updates, no revised versions, nothing. The
Is there like a certain people or something trying to change that?
Sure.
Is that happening?
Trump? No, just kidding.
No, but I mean like within the religion trying to change the Quran and make it.
Yes, there are people, whether they're actually Muslim or not, I don't know, but there are always people trying to revise religious texts, right? Like when you look at the Bible, there are many people like King James and Pope Damasus and other people in the past who edited the Bible. They took stuff out, they put stuff in, and they added practices. And that's why Martin Luther and his rebellion against the Catholic Church, because he felt many of the practices in Christianity were no longer the teachings of Jesus. So you have that. And we have that in Islam, and we call it bid'ah, innovation. You know, people want to innovate in the religion. They want to take things out. They want to say, oh, there's no such thing as hijab in Islam. Yes, there is. Read the Quran. Or, you know, whatever else concept they want to take out. But we as Muslims believe in sticking to our original text the way it is, and we believe it's such an enlightened text that it can work in any time, in any place, in any era, in any country. There's nothing about being Muslim that doesn't allow me to function as an American.
Did you say that from different countries there's different
there are
interpretations of it? Like I have a friend who I've known since 7th grade. He's a really good friend of mine.
Cool.
His name's Wujia, and he's Bosnian.
Nice.
So would there be a difference in the way that he...
So there are cultural practices, and then there's the religion. And the religion is the same everywhere. But cultural practices may vary. Like Bosnians have different types of food than maybe people from Afghanistan, or people from Chechnya, or people from Africa. Even though they're all Muslims, they may have different types of clothing. They may have different methods of family life. You know, maybe some people are very close-knit, and some people are kind of more spread apart. But the religion stays the same. And why? Because the Quran is that one Quran. We don't have two. So whether you're in Bosnia or in Somalia or in China, you have that one Quran. So when you want to go back to the rulings, you can go back to the Quran. And you only have one prophet. You don't have like the Catholic idea that Mary is divine and Protestants saying it's not. In Islam, we have one prophet, and he was not a god. He was a prophet. He was a human being. He received revelation from God, but he wasn't a deity. We don't worship him. But he is an example for all of us to come together. So if you really want to know the religion, everywhere you can find the same thing. But if you want to look at cultural practices, like how you conduct your weddings and how many days is your wedding, that stuff, you know, it's cultural. So you'll find some differences there. Now, you may have good Muslims and bad Muslims. Obviously, like everything else, you may have a Muslim who drinks alcohol. That's his choice, or her choice. But in Islam, alcohol is forbidden. There's no doubt about that. Yes?
I read about that whole, you have two wives, you must treat them evenly and give them the exact same thing in your time. So is it promoting more than one wife, or is it okaying it?
Excellent question. If we look at the Quran, the verse in the Quran about polygamy, they start with the permission to have 2, 3, or 4. That's a max, not like Mormons, not going to go 20 or that kind of stuff. But then God or Allah tells you that it's best for you to stay to one, because you will not be able to be fair between them. So if there is no need, then one man, one wife, great. Adam, Eve kind of a setup, right? But Islam is a very practical religion. It's a religion that, as I said, is applicable in all times, in all places, till the day of judgment. So that means there has to be room for certain societies and certain places where polygamy will be needed. For example, in Iraq nowadays, you have a big problem because many men are dead. They have these battles in Fallujah, and mostly who died is the men. And many of the women are left without anybody who can really provide or protect. And those are lawless societies now. You know, when the Marines went into Fallujah and whatever happened, you know, there was no police force left intact. There was no army left intact. So when they left, what happened to people? They were left without protection. So in that type of a setup, if your wife tells you, hey, you know what, my neighbor, her husband's dead, no, she's got kids, nobody's going to protect her, you know what, let's bring her in. And we know that when you live in close quarters and that kind of conditions, instead of having things happen secretly and then having problems, just go ahead and marry her. And if that happens, in that situation, you have to have that flexibility. But regularly, I don't know if any of you guys are married, I don't know why you want to have two wives. It's hard enough to keep one wife and kids and happy and all that kind of stuff. You know, I already lost a lot of my hair, I don't want to go bald yet. So, you know, this is, regularly, it doesn't really happen. In the Muslim world, if you look at, in most Muslim countries, you won't find it as a norm. But there are times. Sometimes a woman is unable to have a child, and she wants her husband to take another wife so they can have children. And if they want to do that, they have that right. And it's something amazing to me in America, that if you want to marry a guy, and you're a guy, that's okay. And if you marry a woman and you're a woman, that's okay. And if you want to dress up like whatever and use the opposite gender's bathroom, it's your right. But if two women want to marry one man, what's the problem? I mean, if you have the right to choose, how come you don't have the right to choose there? People are marrying dogs in other countries and places, and they find that acceptable. But, you know, here we have the stigma. You know, as long as everybody's open and honest and okay with it, go for it.
What's the reasoning behind the separation of men and women in a mosque?
Excellent question. So when you're in a mosque, you are there for worship. You are there to build that connection, that devotion with your Creator. You are not there to flex. And what happens, and it's natural, psychology, when you have young people of opposite genders that are, you know, not quite committed yet apparently, and they're looking, is that they start to try to impress the other gender. And they start to be focused on that natural attraction, and they don't focus on the religion. And that's why there's that separation. You know, like the mosque that I usually attend, and Muslims, we can go to any mosque, and we don't have this my mosque and your mosque stuff. You know, the women have actually the better. They have a bigger area, they have a better entrance, they're on top, we're on bottom. So it's not about better or worse. It really has to do with focusing. And otherwise people will be praying, they're like, oh, you know, I'm going to be praying today. You know, you don't want to do that. Like, you know, don't flex, don't try to show off. Worry about that relationship you have with your Creator. And that's not just a Muslim thing. I've been to Palestine, to what's currently called Israel, and Jerusalem, and I've seen the Wailing Wall, where people of the Jewish faith, they go and they worship, and it's separate. Men and women are separate there. And if you look in many of the Catholic or the Vatican and earlier sources, you will find the same thing. For them to be able to focus on worship and not be distracted by trying to attract the opposite gender. What else? This is great. We're getting a lot of questions. You can take 3 if you like.
For Islam, does it roughly translate to love?
That's a pretty.
I read that.
Islam comes from a word called aslama, which has its root word from a word called salama, which would mean peace. So if you translate it to say that it has a root word from peace, that would make sense.
Okay.
But Islam actually means submission. And what does it mean? You submit yourself to your Creator. So maybe somebody wants to go get drunk and drive home 80 miles an hour, but because their Creator tells them in the Quran that you can't, you submit yourself and you're like, you know what, I'm going to stick to the Pepsi tonight, you know, or juice or organic, whatever, right? And you live that holy life that your Creator wants for you. That's the true meaning of Islam.
And also, it's like,
and Islam is the religion, Muslim are the people.
okay.
All right? Don't ask me if I'm Islam and if my religion is Muslim. All right? That's like going to somebody Mexican and saying, "Are you Spanish? Do you speak Mexican?" So Islam is the religion, Muslim are the people. Okay.
I was going to make a connection because in Tagalog, I'm Filipino.
Yes.
Salamat.
Salamat po.
Yeah.
Yes. Philippines used to be all Muslim.
Yeah.
And that's why Manila has also come from Allah. You know, and if you look at Tagalog, a lot of the words like salamat po come from salam, which is an Islamic greeting that they would give, and it's been used as thank you in Tagalog today. If you read history, the Spanish, they went to Philippines like they came to Southern America here, and what exactly all that propagation was more like become Christian or we kill you kind of stuff. Spanish Inquisition, anybody? Anybody remember that? I kind of forgot that, huh? So that's why you see a lot of those roots in the Philippines.
That's cool. You were saying Muslim and Islam?
Yes.
Islam is the
religion.
The religion, and Muslims are
The people, yes.
Why is it, when we talk about Christianity, it's Christians, and Judaism is Jewish people?
Right.
And why is
Excellent.
different?
First thing is, Christianity comes from the word Christ. So So meaning followers of Jesus Christ. But that would start at the time of Jesus, not before. And Judaism comes from Judah at the time of Judah. Buddhism comes from Buddha from the time of Buddha. Confucianism from Confucius. But Islam's not like that. We're not Muhammadans. We are Muslim, meaning Muslim is the one who practices Islam. And the root word Muslim is ism fa'il, the one who actually does aslama, who actually submits, who does that. And that's why Muslims believe that we're on the same religion as Abraham and Moses and Jesus. We're all bringing it together. You know, have you guys seen like people sometimes want to burn Qur'ans, or they want to make cartoons of the Prophet or burn images? You see that in Western countries. But you've never ever seen a Muslim burn a picture of Jesus or disrespect the Prophet Jesus or Moses or Abraham, because we believe in the Quran that we have to believe in all of them equally. Meaning, if you don't believe in Jesus, you can't be a Muslim. If you don't believe in Moses, you can't be a Muslim. That is a core belief, to respect, love all of them, all of the prophets. And that's why we never disrespect any of them. Now, is Jesus God? No. We believe he was a prophet, like Moses, like Abraham, like the Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon all of them. I'm here. If you got questions, I got time. Going once? Going twice? Go ahead. Got just in time.
Yes. We as Muslims, we follow Moses, Jesus, and all that. So, with the keeping of the Sabbath, can you please explain that and why Muslims we don't?
Excellent. So when we look at the core beliefs of Islam, they are the same core beliefs that were taught by the prophets, Jesus, or by Moses, or by Abraham, or everybody else. You know, to believe in one God, to worship that God, not to worship idols, not to worship, monkeys and cows or whatever else, and to have, a prayer, to have fasting. But the exact concepts, like do you fast 40 days or 30 days, do you fast on Yom Kippur or whatever, these things are different. The Jews were given the holy day of being Saturday, and that's why they kept the Sabbath. And the Christians were given Sunday, and that's why you have Sunday church. And the Muslims were given Friday, and that's why we have the Friday congregation, the Friday prayers. So that is what our nation, our ummah has been given, and that's what we follow. Anybody else? Going once. Go ahead.
I've always wondered, each time where we got a chance to go out of town, at least the first time running in Bahrain, several times they were going through Ramadan.
Right.
Can you explain what
Excellent.
that actually is?
Sure. Ramadan is the month-long, lunar month-long fasting that every Muslim who is able-bodied can. If you're not able, diabetics, travelers, you don't have to. But if you're able, then from sunrise to sunset, you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't engage in marital relations. You have that fasting to cleanse yourself. And there are many benefits to it. Why do we do it? Because in the Quran. But benefits, there are many. First, it's a cleanser. It cleans your body. Many doctors recommend fasting nowadays to clean the body, to lose weight, to do all that kind of stuff. We get it from our religious practice. Secondly, it reminds you of hunger. When you talk about world hunger, when you talk about countries that are hungry and you're throwing away every plate, your cafeteria here, if you go in the end of the day and look at what they throw away, go to a hometown buffet, go to a sizzler, and see what we throw in the trash. And the fact that we have farmers in America that farm to throw their crops in the water, and they're subsidized by our government just to keep prices up. And then it realized that we don't realize what hunger is. And when you go hungry for a day, and trust me, at the end of the day, you are hungry, and you love food, and then you realize that I have this luxury that at the end of the day, I'm going to get together with my family or my friends or neighbors or the community, and we're going to eat a lot. But there are people who don't have food and they don't get to eat. Then you realize that charity, that trying to help, is your responsibility. And that's why the most charity given is in Ramadan. In Ramadan, food goes out to every country around the world from Muslims. It fuels Muslims, it fuels non-Muslims. We realize what people go through. And that's why it's a great reminder as well. It's a very spiritual thing, because it's not just about not eating. It's also about getting rid of your other bad habits. You don't just give up one thing like they do in Lent. You give up everything bad. So many times, maybe somebody has a problem with cursing or some other ill, but in Ramadan, many people I know, they quit smoking in Ramadan because they didn't smoke in the daytime. They're like, if I can stay away from it all day and a whole month, then I'm just going to take it. So a lot of other benefits as well, but that's Ramadan. Go ahead.
Could you please explain to me the splitting of the moon? Was it a literal event or was it a metaphoric?
Excellent. Maybe it's a little detail for other people, but I'll try to do it in a concise manner. According to Islamic tradition, there was a time when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was asked by many of the people to show a miracle. And like Jesus had his miracles and Moses had his miracles, splitting of the ocean, the Prophet Muhammad, one of his miracles was that he pointed at the moon and it split in two and then it came back together. And obviously we believe this was a miraculous splitting. It wasn't like something down in the middle or like an eclipse or something. It was actual splitting. And not only in Islamic tradition, but as we discussed in the series we're doing on the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, there are Hindu traditions, there are other traditions from that time period that also document this. So we believe that it was literal and it was miraculous and it was to show the people that he was a true prophet. And we don't just believe this from Islamic traditions, we have references from other historic people of the time who had no way of communicating with radio, like southern India, that also recorded this event. We have a series we do every Saturday on the life of the Prophet. I know you're there sometimes, and you can watch a lot of those videos online, and we go over all of these things from the authentic sources. Okay. Going once, going twice. So